After 1107, Sanji stocks are at an all-time high, while Zoro stocks continue to fall with each passing chapter. At least we can say we got to see our favorite sword boy in this chapter, but the fact that he's still playing around with the Catman is honestly pretty disappointing, and I really feel like it only feels that way because Oda hasn't actually shown us the fight. We got to see Luffy trading blows with Kizaru and squaring off with Saturn, and we got to see Sanji put his body on the line time and time again to protect Bonnie and the others from both of them. But up until this chapter, basically all we've gotten about Zoro's battle with Lucci is offhand comments from others saying, oh, Zoro's still fighting him. And the way they say it implies that it's a fight that even they are surprised Zoro hasn't already won. Which makes us fans more frustrated with each time we hear it, because to us, it feels as though Zoro is playing around while all of these life or death events are going on. Which, to be fair, yeah, he kinda is. We know for a fact that Zoro is not taking this fight with Lucci seriously for two reasons. One, he's not using 3 sword style, he's only using 2, and B, he's not wearing his trademark bandana. Until both of these happen, Zoro is not putting his all into the battle. But back to my original argument, had we seen more of this fight, like maybe even just one chapter completely devoted to it, or hell, even half a chapter, then I think we as fans would be more okay with it completely sidelining Zoro, especially since it seems as though Jinbei will interrupt the fight before Zoro even gets a chance to finish it. But Jinbei's not there yet, and based on the way Zoro talks in this chapter, it does seem like he's somewhat aware of what's going on the island, and is ready to end this fight so he can go help the others. So there's still a chance we might get more of it in the coming chapters and see Zoro once and for all put Lucci down. But until then, the spotlight will continue to focus on both Luffy and Sanji, who did not fail to impress in this chapter, with Luffy unleashing his booming Dawn Gatling on Saturn, knocking him far away from the battle. Which we'll get back to that in a moment because that is going to be very, very important later on. But even more importantly, I love the interaction between Bonnie and Luffy in this chapter, with him joking about how weak her attack on Saturn was, then her sending him after Saturn telling him to show her how it's done, and then him throwing multiple punches at Saturn for hurting her and Vegapunk. It's just, I don't know, something about these two in this chapter really resonated with me. It was almost like I was watching a big brother go after someone who had been bullying his little sister. And the more I see the two of them interact, the more on board I am with the idea of Bonnie joining the crew, or at the very least joining the Grand Fleet. And then there's Sanji, who just casually kicked away another one of Kizaru's attacks in this chapter, which was kinda weird. Not Sanji kicking away the attack, but the way everyone reacted to it, like this was his first time deflecting one of them. And I mean, I get it, this attack was seemingly much more powerful, definitely intended to take out both Bonnie and Vegapunk in one shot, but still, Sanji deflecting the light beams at this point isn't anything new, he just did it in the last chapter. So what was it about this attack that left everyone kinda shocked? And my only guess is that this is somehow everyone's first time actually seeing him deflect the light-based attacks, which could be possible because if you go back to that moment when Kizaru attacked them in the last chapter, you can see that everyone is conveniently looking the other way when Sanji jumps in to save Bonnie. So it could be that none of them saw him do it. But Kizaru was facing him, so he definitely saw Sanji do it in the last chapter. So I don't know, maybe he was just shocked that such a powerful attack was knocked away so easily. But I will say, unless the boots they're wearing have a function similar to Alice's light gloves that she used in the beginning of the arc to fight that hologram, Sanji being able to deflect this light attack makes it much more believable that he'll one day be able to beat Kizaru. I say one day because even now in a 1v1, I still had to bet on Kizaru. And look, that's not to say I don't think that Sanji is strong enough to take him on. I actually think he could do a lot of damage to Kizaru if he lands a hit. But that's the problem right there, actually landing one. At the moment, I think Kizaru is simply too fast for Sanji to keep up with, even with observation haki. So between now and the next time they see each other, Sanji is going to need a major boost in speed if he wants to be able to take him on. Because as Kizaru says in this chapter, after failing to kill Vegapunk, Bonnie, and Kuma multiple times, along with letting Saturn take damage multiple times as well, once this is all said and done, the Gorosei are going to want someone to answer for how much of a catastrophic mess this operation was, and unless he can bring them either Vegapunk's head, Luffy's head, or both, he's most likely going to end up being the one to take all the blame. But that's only my speculation, and I really only see it happening if Saturn gets gravely injured or somehow doesn't make out the island, which honestly, the way this arc is going so far and the way things have been kind of piling up on him, it's kind of looking more likely that one of those two things might end up happening. But that's a problem for future Kizaru. Current Kizaru has his hands full dealing with a god and his left-hand man, though I don't see their fight lasting very long. Mostly because Kuma, Bonnie, and Atlas have already escaped with Frankie, meaning that the only person left to protect is Vegapunk, who has already stated that if he moves, he dies. And even if they manage to get Chopper there, I doubt he could save him at this point. So it's only a matter of time before Sanji and Luffy are unfortunately forced to leave him behind. Which I mean is very sad because they started this entire thing trying to save him, but at the same time, we as a fandom all pretty much expected that Vegapunk was not making it off the island. Now, That being said, it's still out on the air if whether or not any of the other Vegapunks are going to get off the island safely. Personally, the only one I think is guaranteed to make it off the island at this point is Lilith, and that's only because she's already aboard the Thousand Sunny. Until the rest of the Vegapunks are on board that ship, it's completely up in the air whether or not they're going to make it off the island. And that includes York, who, now that I think about it, we still have no idea what's going on with her. Is she still being held captive in that room? Because the only people who were watching her were the Straw Hats, and they've all separated at this point. So if no one's there watching her, is she just kind of left at her own devices? Because if she is, I would imagine that her first stop is to go and free the Seraphim. Because if she takes control of them, as long as she avoids Saturn, or at the very least he doesn't give a command that contradicts her own commands, then she is pretty much guaranteed safety on the island. Also, what's going on with Stussy? Because the last time we saw her in the current day was when she got attacked by Lucci. So I'm really hoping that after she kind of joined forces with them, they didn't just leave her to die. But on much happier news, we find out that it's not just Dory and Bragi storming Egghead, but all of the giant warrior pirates, and Usopp is the first Straw Hat to notice them, which is in my opinion just heavily hinting that once we get to Elbaf, he's going to play a major role. I hope. It's kinda up in the air at this point because I mean, we all thought the same thing about Frankie once we realized we were going to Egghead, and while he landed a pretty impressive shot on Saturn, probably the most impressive one besides what Luffy does in this chapter, he hasn't really done much else. But hey, here's hoping that before we leave the island, Frankie will get something, and if not, that Usopp will at least have a better showing in the next arc. But with the Giants here, this fixes a major problem that the Straw Hats have, that funnily enough, one of their own created, with the ship in danger of flying off the side of the island due to the ice slide that Brook made. Because once Nami, Chopper, and Usopp follow Lilith's instructions on taking down the barrier, one of the Giants can just simply catch a ship, plop it on theirs, and then once everyone's on board, there will be nothing standing in their way to getting to Elbaf. So yeah, that problem is pretty much going to take care of itself over the next few chapters. But now we have a new one, because at the end of this chapter, after Saturn gets sent flying by Luffy, he runs into Katarina Devon and Van Ogre, and Katarina ends up touching his leg, which we don't know 100% for sure, but it is heavily speculated that this is a requirement for her to use her Devil Fruit. And even though after Egghead's over, the entire One Piece world will be talking about what the Straw Hats did on the island, this is the single most important scene from this entire arc, because now Blackbeard has a member of his crew who can impersonate one of the 5 elders, which now opens the door for him to do God knows what. Not to mention, we have no idea how long these two have been on the island or what else they've been up to. I just mentioned how we have no idea what's currently going on with York. For all we know, they could have been to where she's being held captive and already struck some kind of deal with her. There was that running theory that Katarina had at some point switched places with Nami, and she's been the one with the Straw Hats the whole time, mostly because I believe this theory spawned off the idea that in one of the previous chapters in a small panel, Nami was drawn without her classic tattoo, which personally I never agreed with, because if Katarina can copy someone perfectly, then she would have copied the tattoo as well. But still, we now know that that can't be the case. But then, what have they been doing this whole time if she wasn't pretending to be one of the current members of the main cast? And more importantly, why did they come to Egghead in the first place? What were they originally after? My best guess is they intended for her to copy Vegapunk, not knowing about the kill order placed on his head, and Saturn just happened to land right in their lap instead. And now that we have Caribou begging at the end of the chapter to join Blackbeard's crew, and bringing with him all the knowledge he has from his time with the Straw Hats, like the secrets about the ancient weapons, Teach might just be the front runner now in the race to become Pirate King. But will he stop there? We already knew his ambitions didn't end at becoming officially recognized as King of Hachinisu. He wants much more than that. And if his ship's namesake is any indication on his goals, Blackbeard won't be satisfied until he's officially named King of the World.